Greetings, gamers. I'm Mark Frein, and this is Freinztime, a channel where I give in-depth reviews of tabletop role-playing games new and old. The format of these reviews will always be the same. What do I love about this game, and who else might love this game? Here today, I'm looking at Sentinel Comics, the role-playing game. But you'll have to be patient. First, I want to talk about the Supers RPG genre itself. The superhero genre in tabletop RPGs goes back a long, long time. I remember picking up Villains and Vigilantes when I was a kid. Along with Champions, it defined the early games in the genre. I don't think I ever actually played Villains and Vigilantes, which is probably a good thing given the chart-based complexity. But the art was fantastic, and there's something so fun about creating a superhero character. The same delight in knowing power sets, relative strength levels, all the stuff when one is a comic book fan, as I was, just gets amplified when playing superhero RPGs where you make the action happen yourself. Also, Villains and Vigilantes is the first RPG I'm aware of to use a technique that can be a lot of fun. You base your character on yourself. Powers are then randomly generated, which makes for surprise and delight even in the character creation phase of the game. However, I do think there are a couple of deep problems with superhero RPGs that make them second or third choices to standard fantasy RPGs. The first is what I'm going to call the problem of verisimilitude. Well, that's a mouthful. Or we could just call it the issue of what a particular strength score or strength level translates to in the kind of tonnage a hero can pick up and toss around. There's a natural inclination in superhero gaming where, as a player, I want to know how much I can lift, exactly how fast I can run, how much smarter I am than the villain or other superheroes. That's partly because, as superhero comic fans, we all used to care about that too. I remember loving my Marvel books back in the day that compared strength levels of various heroes and supervillains. The more detailed the rules and stats in a superhero game, the deeper we can fall into this trap when gaming. We get precise rules for knockback, for example, expressed in feet based on relative strength levels. We get precise rules for exactly how much ground one can cover given one's speed or agility rating, all of that sort of thing. But the problem rears its head in multiple ways. First, as contemporary comics and TV like The Boys show exploit, someone that could actually run the speed of sound would turn a bystander into a red smear if they accidentally even bumped them. Superheroes break the rules of physics all day long. So the temptation to model something with detailed accuracy is already leading us into fantasy land for the most part. The second issue is that it can be very problematic to turn a superhero RPG into a tactical game. Fantasy games work as tactical games because no matter how super heroic the fantasy game gets, you still largely have little tactical skirmishes room to room defining the play experience. But how do you fit a fight like the ones in the recent Fantastic Four MCU movie on a tactical battle map? The action goes across whole cities, up into the atmosphere, literally from combat round to combat round. If I have all these shiny and concrete rules for knockback in feet and speed covered per round, I want to see them play out on a tactical map if it's in front of me, either on a tabletop or on a virtual tabletop. But how the heck do you do that and still capture the essence of the genre's best fight scenes when people are moving around different battle maps all day long during one single fight? Beyond the verisimilitude issue, there's what I would call the problem of character development. In comics, heroes go through all sorts of narrative arcs, and often the best superhero stories are about the personal growth and development of the primary hero. The very best stories tap into basic and core dramatic elements: tragedy, pathos, redemption, all that kind of amazing heroic arcs we're very used to and have been told in stories for thousands of years. But at the same time, most superheroes generally don't change very much in terms of how capable they are. Sometimes they might lose their powers only to regain them. Sometimes they are massively overpowered by a new writer and then brought back to Earth later. Their stories are about growth and development, but really about their personal growth, not the change in their competency. This is very different from D&D and the basic RPG risk and reward motivation that's common in Dungeons and Dragons and other games that are more fantasy based. D&D is so successful, I think, because it taps into something very primal. We take risks and struggle to get more stuff, loot to buy us better equipment, and to get better at taking those exact risks in even more daunting situations. It's a team sport and a hero's journey all at the same time. We start out as the bad news bears or weakling commoners and become lords and even gods. Fun, eh? Superheroes, though, even the street level ones, could kick the butt of most 10th level fighters in D&D. It's just that simple. So you've already peaked from a competency perspective. What's the point of continuing to go at it? This problem makes it hard to sustain superhero RPG campaigns, or at least I've found it hard, especially with players that are used to D&D or similar games. Now, despite the problems, the genre is rich with play options, and I love picking up new superhero RPGs, partly just to see how they tackle these issues, and because rogues galleries with statted out villains are just so much fun to browse through. I've probably played more Mutants and Masterminds from Green Ronin than any other Super system. Mutants and Masterminds has a deeply satisfying character creation approach. It's certainly not for the rules light lovers, but its customization options make it easy to create any superhero you can dream up. The artwork is always very strong in their books, as is the world building. I do recall battles sometimes getting a little on the slow side, especially for when you want to do very fast paced narrative battles. But that's the risk of verisimilitude at work. Okay, you've been very patient with the preamble, and we're not here to talk about other RPGs. We're here to talk about Sentinels RPG. But here's the thing, why I love the Sentinels RPG is because it just ducks these two problems that we've been talking about completely. The Sentinels Comics RPG comes out of Greater Than Game Studio and is an RPG adaptation of their excellent Sentinels of the Multiverse card game. I picked up everything from the card game line during its initial production. I believe I saw it actually demoed at a Gen Con, and my game group played it frequently with a lot of enjoyment. The artwork is certainly on the lighthearted side of comics. It's full on four color heroic. There's a lot of humor built into the game, including one of the supplements that is exclusively about, well, what is essentially their version of Deadpool in their hero named Guys. But the art is consistent and of high quality, giving a very specific feel of the world, the setting, and characterization of the heroes and villains within it. Now, about the game system. When you set to work as a game designer these days, you have a lot of options. You can essentially toss out all prior RPG subsystems and begin fresh, and many have done so, jettisoning initiative systems, combat pacing. There's all sorts of games that have basically started afresh and anew, powered by the Apocalypse game systems, the Cypher system, Daggers in the Dark, everything basically imagining what perfect game system would look like and building it from the ground up. The design team for Sentinels did toss it all out the window, babies, bathwater, everything. At the same time, they kept some elements that I think define fun when you play an RPG. You get polyhedral dice. I actually get a little sad when a game system, no matter how innovative, takes my 8-siders and 12-siders away. If you've been buying polyhedral dice for 30 years and have, yes, dropped some serious cash on fancy sets, you want to use them. It's fun to roll all those dice. In an industry where bold innovation is relatively rare and most games develop incrementally, revising older mechanics, trimming them down, or recovering complexities that were fun and lost, Sentinels RPG really takes a strong stance of difference. It took me a while to appreciate, but I really do love what they're doing. Put as simply as possible, everything in Sentinels happens because you take 1 to 3 polyhedrals appropriate for the acting character and situation, roll them, and generally take the middle outcome as what stands compared to someone else's roll or a standard difficulty progression. For example, I might take a strength power of d10 combined with a close combat quality, which is basically a skill of d6, and a d8 die representing that the current environment is a green stress level, or that my character is currently under green stress, first degree stress. If my rules are 1, 2, and 5, it doesn't matter which die rolled which result. I generally will take the mid die result, or the 2 in this case. Special abilities might let me take the max result, or even combine dice or use multiple dice. A player can really do 4 things: attack, defend, generate a bonus or hindrance for future rolls, or overcome. Overcome is essentially doing something that isn't attacking or defending, any way of acting on the world that is meant to accomplish a goal or overcome an obstacle, like a skill check in other games. Whereas player characters and villains have a wide variety of stats, each represented by a die, lower threat NPCs are represented by single die types: a bystander, D4, a slightly competent mook, a D6, all the way up to a powerful lieutenant or minor supervillain as a D12. These NPCs act with the same single die roll for everything and must roll over it to save from being knocked out of a fight. Whereas the character rolls a die and establishes the difficulty, the NPC must beat that result on their die, which is obviously hard for a bystander or low level mook, but easier for a minor supervillain. Character creation in Sentinels is almost a mini game in itself, in the style of RPGs like Traveller, for example, although in Sentinels you can't perish during character creation, fortunately. You can randomly determine an entire superhero from start to finish on a sequence of tables. Given my love of this for Soups RPGs going all the way back to Villains and Vigilantes, I really enjoy the random element and recommend approaching character generation this way for your Sentinels game. The sequence of random rolls gives you power sets, background, and other character elements that you can weave together to create a fully fleshed out hero. But you can also pick and choose throughout the entire character creation process as desired, customizing extensively or largely ignoring the random results if you want that to. There is zero content on figuring out what strength D10 means when it comes to lifting a car, or D10 speed equates to in terms of miles per hour running. At first, when I read the book, that struck me as an enormous miss because I'm trained to look for it right away in a Soups game. You page through looking for how much tonnage can be lifted by somebody with particular kinds of strength. Where's the table showing all of this? But Sentinels doesn't worry about that. D10 strength is better than D8 strength, and D4 is human standard. That's what you need to know mechanically. What this does is free up me as a game master to decide what in my game and my world this means, which I've done in the game that I'm running. I want my game to be rather low powered, so I describe D6 strength to a player as enough to flip over a small car, but not enough to lift it. That's enough. Verisimilitude problem solved. They throw in some elements I've never seen in an RPG before, borrowed straight from their card game appropriately. The environment the action is taking place in is, in effect, a character or at least an actor in the game. It takes an action during each round of combat, which can help or hurt depending on the environment itself. A character's power set also changes depending on the stress level of the current situation. If the environment is degrading and getting more risky and chaotic, it unlocks more character power options. The same happens if the character is progressively injured. And if you are knocked out of a fight, you can still use your out ability to help your teammates. Sentinels also does not worry about advancement, or not much. One of the most unusual and interesting mechanics is around short term advancement in the form of accumulating hero points through role playing dramatic scenes that can be cashed in for temporary bonuses in future sessions. It's a perfect reward concept for the supers genre. As well, as I complete sessions, I note down issues that can be turned into compilations, which I can tap for extra boosts. Other potential rewards are sidekicks and retconning and reallocating power sets, so my hero does develop or at least change, but the systems push you towards the sort of things that define the actual genre in comic stories and comic movies or superhero movies. That solves the development problem, or at least it takes your mind off of it and encourages the GM and players to just let it go. Okay, wrapping it all up, in summary, I love Sentinels because it is a bold take on a genre of role playing games that has some inherent challenges for tabletop gaming. Sentinels really leans aggressively into that genre, focusing on emulating actions and resolution in a super heroic and loose way, as opposed to a tactical and realistic way. The book is a weighty tome with everything you'd want: rogues gallery, plenty of practical tips on how to run the various game elements successfully. I don't think I've read game book sections on how to run the game from various RPGs in years. I usually just skip right over those. I've been doing this for, well, let's just say a long time, 4 decades. But this time I did, given how conceptually different Sentinels is from many games out there today. And I was really happy I did. I really enjoyed reading those sections. You'll love Sentinel Comics RPG if you enjoy quirky mechanics and the supers genre, obviously. You can use, adapt, or ignore its largely four-color style supers world. You may or may not enjoy the art style. I think it suits the game perfectly. My game world for Sentinels is more street level and gritty, although it definitely invites the humor as much as theirs. Sadly, Greater Than Games has taken a major hit from tariffs and announced in April of 2025 it was reducing its staff. The supplements line for the core RPG is really lightweight. I'd love to see a rogues gallery of villains, minions, and environments. There's a lot of fun content to build, but it may be likely the product line will never go any further, which is a shame. This is a really fun game. All right, with that, it's a wrap. Everyone have great gaming. See you next time.